So to say that Season of the Worthy was a bit of a polarising season would be an understatement. I don't even think that polarising is the right word, because the general consensus from a lot of players is that Season of Worthy was just a little bit lacking. That doesn't mean that it's not still worth breaking down and talking about what worked and what didn't, and that's what we're going to do today. Hello world, Jade here, otherwise known as ScarletRebel. Today I'm going to talk about Season of the Worthy in a little bit more detail, the same way I did with Season of Dawn. This one is hopefully just a little bit more on time, considering my Season of Dawn would end up being like 2 whole months late, or a whole season late. It's currently the 17th of June, so it's been about a week. Actually, I think it's been 2 weeks. Yeah, it's been 2 weeks since Season of the Worthy ended. And we're just gonna talk about everything that happened in the season and talk about what we liked and what we didn't like. So there is a little bit of a disclaimer at the beginning of this video, because I have to put my hands up and be honest that I was one of the people who kind of lost steam on the season in the first half. Although, in my defence, a lot of that came from picking up the new Animal Crossing game, and I've never played an Animal Crossing in my life, and I just really got sucked into it. There's also the facet of the fact that I'm not too interested in Rasputin as a character, so the story didn't really grab me until Felwinter was introduced, and we'll talk about that later. And obviously by introduced I mean we had another facet of his story told. And if you know me, you know that I love when stuff like deep in the lore that hasn't been addressed in the game before gets pulled back up to the front. Obviously people's main criticisms and stuff like that, all of that and me playing Animal Crossing and etc didn't take away from my enjoyment of the game overall or the season. I still managed to play a decent amount, enough to have obviously enough opinions to stand in front of a camera and talk about them. So how did this season begin? So our first kind of inkling that this season was going to revolve around Rasputin came from a cutscene at the end of Season of Dawn. It's a cutscene that involves Osiris storming down the catwalk of Rasputin's main mind lab and basically asking him which side he's on, if he's going to fight for us and defend us, or if he's going to basically forsake us like he did during the collapse. Or how people think he did during the collapse or during the Dark Ages. Basically people up until that point, before that point, didn't really know where Rasputin stood, hence why Osiris was talking him down basically, or trying to find that out, basically telling him to get off his lawn. We then, at the beginning of the season, learned that the Cabal, in a last-ditch effort to win over the Guardians in some manner, had set the Almighty on a crash course for the city in order to try and wipe out all the people there. Anna and Zavala were the ones who made this discovery, so they were the ones who were kind of spearheading the whole campaign. So then, obviously through Anna's help, we made an accord with Rasputin that if we helped to get his satellites up and running, that would make him strong enough to be able to take down the Almighty before it crashed into the city. Which I believe is something that I said in my reaction video. That was I remember talking very briefly about, I wonder if it's make me powerful and I'll save you, or make me powerful so that I can save you. And obviously it ended up being the latter, which is really cool, and I'm kind of glad that that's the way they went with it, because it feels more like Rasputin is actually helping us because he wants to help, you know, prevent a second collapse, which is actually confirmation that we get during this season through one of the bunker story missions type deal thing. And those satellites manifested themselves in a public event called the Seraph Towers. They were on the EDZ, on Io, and on the moon, and you basically had to kickstart a satellite launch sequence, keep enemy races away from it so that it could do the thing, and then, I never won one so I'm not 100% certain, launch a satellite into space based off the fact that it was all powered up, and then those satellites would help, you know, kill the Almighty before it killed us. And obviously along the way we had story missions, interactions with different characters, and we learned a lot more about Rasputin as well. So the first aspect of the season that we're going to talk about is of course the story, the lore, and all of that lovely stuff that is obviously my favourite part. So there were a few narrative previews. There were ones with Anna and ones with Osiris. But the one that really sticks out to me the most as far as narrative previews go is the one that was called, I believe, Remembrance. I'll leave a link to it down in the description below, but it was the one that was about Felwinter and Shaxx back in the Dark Ages. So, quick history lesson, if you never played Destiny 1, never touched Rise of Iron. Rasputin is responsible for the death of a group of Guardians called Iron Lords. The Iron Lords were basically Guardians before Guardians were even a thing. They were heroic, they were mighty, etc, etc, and Lord Felwinter was one of them. Now, we learn a lot more about Felwinter in this season, so I'm not going to spoil anything to do with him right now. But the Iron Lords, and Felwinter in particular, discovered a thing called Siva, which was a self-replicating nanite. I hope you're proud of me for getting that right, Trist. And they definitely viewed it as kind of like their holy grail. The development team talked about it being like Arthur and the Holy Grail kind of thing with the Iron Lords and Siva. They saw it as something that would help them build the city, help them protect people. So they descended into a place called Site 6, which was a Clovis Bray facility type area, and they tried to take it, but they came up against lots of resistance from Rasputin, his frames and Warsats and things of the like, and he ended up using Siva in more of a violent way. He ended up corrupting it in order to kill the Iron Lords. And all I will say is that it wasn't all of the Iron Lords that he was trying to kill in particular. So just bear that in mind. So yes, when I saw that this was a subject of one of the narrative previews, it really caught me off guard. It was kind of like, okay, yes, of course, we're talking about the Iron Lords in relation to Rasputin because he was responsible for their slaughter, but why are we talking about Felwinter in particular? Until you get to the end of the narrative preview and you realise that Site 6 was underneath where Shaxx used to be a warlord, because Shaxx used to be a warlord who were essentially, they were guardians, they were risen, they had ghosts, but they were kind of the villains to the Iron Lord's heroes. So that's kind of why that's there. But you still think to yourself, okay, but why is that in a thing about, because we just had a narrative preview about Osiris and what he's doing because we saw him, so that makes sense. We have one about Anna, that makes sense, she's Anna Bray. Why do we have one about Felwinter? So that was really exciting and felt like a promise of things to come, and oh god, I was going to say things came, but I shouldn't say that. And then we'll just kind of overview the main story beats of the season. So season opens with Anna and Zavala kicking ass on the Almighty and discovering the Cabal's plan to crash it straight into the city. Then the main story beat is that you go to each of the bunkers and open them up. There's a bunker on the EDZ, there's a bunker on the moon, and there's a bunker on Io. I know the EDZ was first, I can't remember if it was the moon or Io, I'll put it around here somewhere which was which. And the idea was you opened them up, again helped Rasputin get his systems online, because that feels like we're always doing that when it comes to Rasputin. And then every week a new one would open and you would get a mission. You would have to like clear out the bunker of enemies, or sometimes you would go straight in and some story stuff would happen. The first time I remember it was Anna and Zavala talking about, you know, can Rasputin be trusted? And Anna saying yes and Zavala saying I'm not sure, and that being a really cool character moment between those two. Brief side note, but Season of Arrivals has really done something that I would really enjoy with Drifter and Eris, where they're just talking to each other, giving their opinions on things, talking about the world, and that's kind of what Anna and Zavala were doing too. It didn't happen as often as it does with Eris and Drifter, but it did happen and I really enjoyed when it did. So they have that first conversation, and then in the next bunker, the next one is Zavala and Rasputin talking, and Rasputin basically saying, look, I saw this happen, I saw the collapse happen, I don't want it to happen again. And Zavala being like, right, cool, you got the Vanguard support. Which, brief side note about Zavala, I just feel like I really don't want this to turn into a tangent, but I have feelings about the man, because it feels like his character, I don't want to say his character is one-dimensional, but there's just something about him that a good example I can give is that during Season of Arrivals right now, there's a line, and I think it's an Idol voice line when he's in the tower, where he's like, the pyramids are on Io, the Traveller did nothing. The pyramid's moving through the system, and still the Traveller does nothing. And you're like, okay, yeah, you're getting there, you're so close to the point. And then he says, so it's up to us. And it's like, no, you're not seeing the point. The point is that the Traveller's not doing anything. So we have to, not in a, oh, it's up to us, but in a, we have to because the Traveller's not doing anything. Maybe that's just a point of view, maybe that's just my opinion, maybe someone sees it from Zavala's point of view and doesn't understand why I'm, you know, aggravated about it. I feel like a very similar thing happened in Season of the Worthy, where when I saw him do that 180, and he's done this a couple of times, I think that's why I'm frustrated. He's done this a couple of times where it's like, these people are our enemy, or we don't know if we can trust these people, and then all of a sudden when he's questioned, when someone's like, will you help me, he's immediately just like, yes I will. I understand that you're the character who has to make the hard decisions, and I know that there's a piece in the most recent law book for Eris's Darkness Messages in the Season of Arrivals where she says something to the tune of, Zavala loves to say no but he also hates to say it, or something like that. He hates and he loves to, something to that extent. It's essentially kind of confirming that whilst Zavala does like to be leader and he likes to make the calls, he's still a little bit, for me, flimsy. I don't think it's bad character writing, I don't think it's bad writing, I don't think that Bungie don't know who that character is, it just feels like they don't know what they want him to do. Like, I can already see Ikora straying. I can already see Ikora being like, okay, no, Eris is right, Drifter's right, Exo-Stranger is right, we need to go cross over the line to the darkness, but I don't know if Zavala will. But then 5 minutes later be like, okay, no, this is fine. It does feel flimsy, it doesn't feel concrete. You know, I don't personally know where they could go with that. I don't know if I would be satisfied with him becoming concrete hero paladin, but you know, that would make more sense. So that's just kind of how I feel about Zavala as a character right now. Anna, on the other hand, love her. No complaints at all. I thought Anna was amazing over this season. I thought her during the Fellwinter's Lie quest was really, really cool, and I really enjoy her, and I really hope that with Beyond Light we get some interaction between her and the Exo-Stranger, who is actually Elsie Bray, her sister, if you didn't know. Then we have the 2 lore books that came out in the season, The Liar and Trials and Tribulations. Now, I haven't read Trials and Tribulations. I feel like I did this with Season of Dawn as well. I didn't read one and I was obsessed with the other. But I didn't read Trials and Tribulations. As far as I'm aware, it kind of centres around Osiris and the cult of Osiris, and I know Brother Vance gets his heart broken, which I think he's a nerd. I'm not a huge fan of his character, but the little interactions that I've seen of Osiris basically like ripping his heart out of his chest and throwing it on the ground kind of made me go, oh, you don't have to do that. So that means that the only one that I've read is The Liar. The Liar is a lore book that you get from getting kills with the Fellwinter's Lie shotgun, and it's a fantastic book. It's very similar to The Man with No Name, where it's the story of, you know, a guardian that we know becoming a guardian, like being risen, what they did up until a certain point. And we learn something huge about Fellwinter, and the way they reveal it is so good and so subtle. I had to have it explained to me, but I still could kind of grasp what was being said. I was like, is this the thing? And then my partner Tristan was like, yeah, that's the thing exactly. And it just was so exciting. It's the first time I've read a lore book. Oh, not the first time, but it's been a long time. I would probably say Season of the Drifter was the last time it happened where I read a lore book and I was like, oh my god, this thing adds to this thing, and this thing is this, and oh my god. So very, very good lore book. Very good lore book. And then one final thing I'll say on the story as a whole is that I was expecting to go into this season with Anna and Zavala and maybe Rasputin at the front, in the same way that Saint and Osiris were very much the characters at the front of Season of Dawn. They were the ones we learnt the most about. They were the ones whose past we went back into. They were the ones who were giving us all of the, you know, quests and quest steps and stuff like that. I like this season how it's kind of been flipped around, because it definitely feels like Rasputin is the one at the front of the narrative. He's the one we're learning more about. He's the one we're helping. But we learn more about him through the actual NPCs that are giving us everything that we need to do, which are Anna and Zavala. And now we're getting into the actual meat of the stuff that we were doing throughout the season. So this part's probably going to be quite short because, again, I didn't play it. I was too busy trying to get my island to a 5-star rating in Animal Crossing. I also don't know if you can hear it, my voice is already going. Which is weird because I filmed a video a few days ago and my voice was definitely not this bad out this amount of time in. So maybe it means I'm getting used to talking to a camera, maybe it means I'm getting worse at it, maybe it means I'm getting ill, I hope not. So, next section, activities. First things up at the top are the Seraph Towers. Now, I only participated in the IO ones and the EDZ one. The EDZ one I did mostly because it was the first one that I did and I felt more comfortable once I went back into the season towards the end to try and finish up some quest stuff. And I will say the Seraph Towers are not my favourite public event that Bungie have ever done. The mechanics were not as easy and as obvious as other public event stuff, even Escalation Protocol. Escalation Protocol was hard, it was difficult when it first came out, but you could still grasp what you were supposed to be doing, what the mechanics of it were. The Seraph Towers felt completely different. I ended up looking up a guide, which is, you know, never a bad thing that has to happen. But the reason why I had to do that was because I kept feeling like I knew what was going on, only to be proved wrong. And that's never a fun gameplay experience when you're playing something and figuring out the mechanics and you think you've got it only to be proved wrong. And before anyone says it, it's a very different experience to a raid. In a raid, you're supposed to get things wrong so you can figure out what's right. I just feel like the public events are supposed to be very different because it's supposed to be, obviously anyone can join in, so anyone should be able to pick it up. For example, the biggest thing I struggled with was I felt like the little balls that dropped that you had to throw at the beam that was going across to power up the satellite. I felt like those dropped at any time, but then when fewer dropped, I was like, clearly something wrong is happening here. Is it because we're not killing enemies? Only for the enemies to completely sweep off of the thing, and there would still only be 2 or 3 dropping. Come to find out, that's because you were supposed to clear it, stand on it, charge it up, and then they'd fall off. But because whenever I came into the public event, they were just falling off, I couldn't figure out what it was, because all Anna was ever saying to me was clear them off the thing. It was never clear them off the thing and stand on it. It was just clear them off the thing. So I was doing basically what I was told. Something else I'll say as well is that as much as I love Anna, all of her voice lines during that public event weren't helpful in order to figure out what was going on. And maybe it would have been annoying to have her be like, do this, now do this, now do this. It sucks that her voice over those public events didn't add anything to it. But one thing I will say is that they changed her voice actor to Erika Ishii, who I love. And I should have said this in my story segment, but I'll say it right now. Erika Ishii killed this voice. She did such a great job as Anna. She threw her all into it. I've seen her on Geek and Sundry. I've seen her in other things. She's amazing. And I just think she did an incredible job. And it feels really cool to know for a fact that there's a voice actor that I know, who I've been following for a while, in my favourite game. They made such a big deal out of her being the new voice for Anna, which I also really appreciated. And yeah, it was just, I think she absolutely nailed it. So there was a heroic adventure in every single bunker, I believe, that obviously would give you like super powerful drops if you did it. Unfortunately, I never got the chance to do it just because I was never a high enough light level, which sucks because I never did that, and that was essentially a lost sector. It was an adventure where you go through a lost sector and kill the boss. I talked in my reaction video about how I was really excited about them revamping Lost Sectors. I never got to do any of the Lost Sectors just out in the wild. I never got to do the heroic one. But that's mostly on me because I wasn't around this season to grind up to get the light level to be able to do it. And then before you could even use the bunker, right, any of the bunkers that you went to on any planet, you had to clear them out of enemies. So it was like a daily bunker buster, I think is what it was called. And you had to do that if you wanted bounties, if you wanted to give Rasputin chipsets so you could level him up, you had to do that first. And that was really annoying. I did not appreciate that. There's a huge difference between you earning something at the end of going through like clearing out enemies or doing a strike or something like that, and having to do something as a mandatory for unlocking something else that in any other normal circumstance you can just access. It's not as if Rasputin is holding super secret awesome bounties. It's not as if I have to prove myself to be able to give him something to level up to get more things on a season pass. I didn't like that. I didn't enjoy it. And also, Fallen Captain champions can kiss my ass. They were the most annoying thing. It was the Overload Fallen Captains. They were just so annoying. Even with an Overload mod, even being on light level, they were just not fun. They were just not fun. Didn't feel like it was a challenge or a fun challenge to beat them, you know what I mean? And then the last thing I can really talk about in terms of activities, because it's the only other thing that I did, is the quest line, the actual quest line for Rasputin that you got at the very beginning. The quest line itself was very confusing. It was phrased very weirdly. I can't even remember off the top of my head what it wanted me to do. If I have video or an image of it, which I hope that I do, I'll put it up on the screen. But the way it was phrased and the actual steps that you had to do to get to where you needed to go, I think you had to level up a Rasputin bunker once, but it took a lot of grinding to get there, which is fine. I don't mind grinding for a quest step. But the way it was explained, it just was not explained cohesively enough, which is a shame. That's another thing, again, that I had to look up a guide to figure out what this bounty actually wanted me to do. I think it was something like you had to level up Rasputin to level 1. That was like the main goal. But in order to do that, you had to get Warmind bits, which, by the way, I hate that phrasing, Warmind bits, just really squicks me out. I don't like it. You had to get Warmind bits through doing public events, through doing bounties and things like that, and then you had to use those Warmind bits to buy a thing in the bunker, and then if you bought a thing, it would give you chipsets, or if you bought a certain amount of things, they would give you chipsets, and then you put those chipsets back into the thing, or you had to buy chipsets through something else and then put it back into the bunker, and it was just far too confusing. There was too many material types. So, for example, what's happening in Season of Arrivals right now, and I'm probably going to talk about this when I talk about Season of Arrivals, which I will because I adore this season. It's been really good so far. What they did in Season of Arrivals was they made that a lot more cohesive, which I appreciate so much. But basically they should have done what they're doing with the prismatic recaster in Rasputin's bunker, which obviously I'm glad they're doing it now, but that was just really confusing, and I'm glad that they seemed to have gotten that criticism from somewhere. So I'm breaking up my pattern here because we're about to start talking about the exotic weapons, the exotic quests in the season, and I may as well start talking about Guardian games because I unfortunately did not play Guardian games and therefore didn't get the heir apparent, so I can't really talk about that gun or its quest at all. However, from what I understand, it was very similar to Arbalest during the spring event, I believe last year, where you basically just earned it through doing the event, which I think is really cool, and I like that pretty much every event has a weapon like that you earn through, you know, doing the damn thing, and it's a pretty good weapon at the end of everything. At least I hear it is. I haven't heard tons about heir apparent, but I also haven't heard nothing, so it seems like it sits in that sweet spot of like being decent but not being, you know, over the top meta breaking or anything like that. So again, the only reason that I didn't do Guardian games is because I was too busy playing Animal Crossing. So I know I said in my Season of the Worthy reaction video that I was excited for it, and on that same token I am happy to report that I saw a very minimal amount of ableist crayon-eating titan jokes, so well done Disney community, you did it. For just a little while during Season of the Worthy, you weren't terrible. So overall, I think Guardian Games was a cute idea that I'm only a little bit upset that I missed out on. And honestly, a lot of the upset just comes from the fact that the Hunter Cloak, even if it is silver, is so gorgeous, and I don't think I ever got it, and I'm not sure if I can, so that's my only kind of main reason for upset for missing it, which I think tells you everything about an outsider's perspective of the event itself. And as a Hunter main, I'm actually quite glad that Titans won, because God knows they do everything around here anyway. Now on to my favourite part of these videos, talking about the exotic quests. Now, with Heir Apparent out of the way, the two exotic quests that I can talk about is the Fourth Horseman and Felwinter's Lie. Now, the Fourth Horseman, I don't really have a lot to say on that, just because I never actually got it. The very end of the quest line required you to go into one of the heroic adventures that I mentioned earlier I wasn't a high enough light level to do. So even though I went in and I gave it a good shot, it got to the point where this wasn't a gun that I was desperate enough for, that I was gonna sink all my time into getting before the weekly reset. I think I was in the last week of Season of the Worthy, and I basically just looked at the time I had left, looked at everything that I had, and had to ask myself if I really wanted this shotgun, and the answer unfortunately was no. And also, I know I've said this before, but I'm not a huge fan of the Cabal, and I know that the Fourth Horseman had a lot to do with that. So as cool of a gun as it might be, and as cool as the lore might be to someone else, I just wasn't personally like, you know, jumping over my own feet to get it. Which means that we move on to the one part I want to talk about more than anything, which is the Felwinter's Lie quest. So I loved this quest so much that I was considering making a whole separate video about it, very similar to my Devil's Ruin video that I did. Unfortunately, I ran out of time. There's other videos that I want to get up this season, so the sacrifice had to be made, and I'm talking about it here. So all I will say is that if you haven't seen anything from the Felwinter's Lie quest, if you didn't play it and you're planning on watching someone play it or finding a video or something like that, I will put a video of the quest down in the description. And also, if you haven't read the Liar lore book, I'm about to spoil both of those. So go away, read, watch whatever you have to, and then come back, because I loved everything about this quest. There is a video to be made about Felwinter in general. There's a video to be made about the perception that Iron Lords and Guardians nowadays in the world of Destiny have of Felwinter, and why he named his gun Felwinter Lie, and why he had to act as shrouded as he did. It's because back in the Golden Age, he was essentially Rasputin's son. I'm sure there's a better, more scientific way to explain it, but the very basic version that I would explain to someone else is that Rasputin learned about the world and humanity through Felwinter's eyes, which meant that Rasputin really had an attachment to this Exo. He was an Exo, by the way. Rasputin made him himself, or at least that's the implication that I got. So this was an Exo that Rasputin, we learn, you know, cared about very greatly. He was his own. He regarded him as a son. He still regards him as a son. And you learn exactly how much he did love him in this quest. Well, love, I know a lot of people would argue against because AI and etc. stuff like that, but you know, screw all of that. Rasputin did care for Felwinter in the Golden Age, and what ended up happening was that when the collapse happened, Felwinter came back as a Guardian. Felwinter comes back as a Guardian and basically spends the majority of the first part of his life running from Rasputin, who decides, in his own words basically, that if I can't have him, no one can. He sends warsats, he sends frames, he tries to either bring him back or kill him, and it's told so beautifully and like really bittersweetly during the quest itself. When you get to the point where you do a story mission, you go down into the moon bunker and Anna is translating for Rasputin, and he basically tells you the story of a Guardian who was much loved, who people knew very well, who wanted to protect his people, but how the tyrant, which is what Rasputin refers to himself as, the tyrant being this Guardian's father, wanted him to come back and decided that if he wouldn't come back, he would just kill him.
He's telling a story. In a time of great prosperity, a tyrant king sent his son to live among the people and learn their ways. He did so for many years, until a great calamity befell the kingdom. In the aftermath, the tyrant's son was changed. The tyrant's son turned away from his father and became a warrior. The tyrant chased his son across fields and mountains and oceans. He said, "If I can't have my son, then no one shall."
So the big reveal that ends up happening throughout this questline, throughout the Liar book, even going so far back as the Remembrance narrative preview from before the season, is that whilst Felwinter is looking into Rasputin and trying to figure out a way to basically stay safe from him and trying to figure out what his deal is and etc., he ends up finding Siva. Felspring says it herself, Felspring being the imaginative name for Felwinter's ghost. Felspring says it herself where she feels like it's a trap, it's too easy, Rasputin's never given them anything. The whole reason they went to Felwinter Peak and it became Felwinter Peak is because they were trying to use the mountain to stay away from Rasputin, which worked for the longest time. But Felwinter finds Siva, which is in a site which is underneath Shax's castle, which is why he goes to challenge him in that preview and try and get him to leave because they need to get down into that site. Meanwhile, Felwinter's aware of who he is. Felwinter finds out in the Liar book, and that's how we find out, that he is a thing called a Siddhartha Golem. So essentially, you know, Felwinter is this golem type thing for Rasputin. As Rasputin explains, he basically sees the world through Felwinter's eyes, or he saw the world before the collapse through Felwinter's eyes, and again, regarded him as a son. So Felwinter knows this. Felwinter knows this when Rasputin just also conveniently shows him Siva, when the Iron Lords are like, yeah, let's go take it, and as they're descending into the site and Rasputin starts to attack. So if you've played Destiny 1, if you know the story of the Iron Lords, you end up realising that their deaths were just collateral for Rasputin telling the world that no one else is allowed to have Felwinter.
In the end, the tyrant used his son's love of the people against him. He promised him a miraculous technology that could rebuild the kingdom. When his son came to claim it, he unleashed a plague upon him. His son was destroyed. And the tyrant looked upon his tyranny and wept.
And I just want to say, and this might be some headcanoning and personal opinions on my own behalf, if Rasputin did shoot the Traveller, which we still don't have confirmation for, if Rasputin was part of something that stopped the Traveller from leaving, or if Rasputin just watched the Traveller try to leave before the darkness got to it, to then watch that same thing after so much time take the one thing that you have that is still yours post-collapse and turn it into something different. Obviously I wouldn't go so far as to killing that thing, but I can see where the rationale for this, you know, narrative story for Rasputin came from. The music is amazing, the atmosphere is amazing, you actually go down further into the bunker, and oh my god, that bit where you're walking down and it all lights up and it looks like a theatre. Just, oh my god, it's so good. The environment was incredible, the music was incredible. The way Anna's voice broke up, like the radio connection broke up right as she realised that the tyrant's son was Felwinter. It's just so good. The way Rasputin tells that story, the way Anna tells it through him, the way he shows it to you in the holograms, the whole thing felt like he was trying to explain his wrongdoings. What AI that wouldn't want to help us would do that? He could have just not said anything. We could have gone for the rest of time believing that the Iron Lords foolhardily went down into Site 6 to try and get Siva, but were stopped by him. He could have told us that Siva wasn't there to take. He could have told us that he did it because they were going to do it for a bad reason, because no one's there to dispute it apart from Saladin. Maybe I'm thinking a little bit too in the world of Destiny right now, but I think this quest was, first of all, perfect. Absolutely perfect. Really, really good. More things like that in the future, please, especially if, you know, you are changing the season model, but if you're going to keep doing smaller bursts of content, please, please, please keep putting quests like this in because they are so good, but also that quest was necessary because we didn't have any reason to trust Rasputin. I remember Anna saying at the end of the quest that she wished Zavala could hear it, because yes, he told Zavala, look, I've seen the collapse already, I don't want to watch it happen again, but what better way to prove to us, the Guardian, that he regrets things that he's done and he's not just a crazy war mind, than to show him his biggest regret, which is killing the last thing that he had left. I'm not saying I sympathise with him, I'm not going down that route of, ooh, he's just misunderstood. He shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't have done that. He's responsible for the death of so many Guardians. He's responsible for corrupting a whole nanite that could have been so good for people. He's responsible for Axis and the Fallen Splicers and lots of stuff that happened. And up until now, you could very easily tell yourself that like he doesn't care. But why lay it all bare? If he knew he was going to help us with the Almighty, if he'd already told Zavala, why lay all of that bare? They could have done Felwinter any other way. They could have had us get his life from his mountain. They could have had us get his gun from, you know, Site 6 again. They could have had us get it from that, you know, mangled up, really weird looking monster type thing in the Site 6 mission. If you played Rise of Iron, you know what I'm talking about. But instead they chose to make Rasputin more than just an angry war mind who we're not sure we can trust. The question of trust is still up in the air. I would imagine that comes down to a person-on-person basis. Obviously not super similar to the Drifter, but in that similar vein. Yeah, we've seen Drifters pass with Orin. Yeah, we've seen Drifters horrible experiences with the Nine, but some people still don't trust him, and that makes sense. Same goes for Rasputin. But I just cannot sing the praises of this quest enough. It was told brilliantly, it was done brilliantly, and what better way to show Rasputin's guilt than to see the hologram of Felwinter, to see the brace and the leg piece and know that those were the only parts he was able to get back, and he still scrounged them up. Not only that, but got them to the moon. You could say it's performative, you could say it's all bullshit if you really wanted to, but I have always said that Bungie are amazing at environmental storytelling. People want to be like, oh look, Bungie did Almighty Live, they're really great at environmental storytelling. No, they've always been amazing with environmental storytelling, so this was just a perfect example of that, and rather than keep talking about it, I'm gonna leave it there and maybe talk about Felwinter and Rasputin in a different video. Who knows, I think their story is super interesting. I think Felwinter is an amazing, interesting character, and you know, the fact that a small quest like that could give me this kind of passion for a character who I didn't really have this for in the past just kind of tells you everything. So the very last thing I'm going to talk about is the Almighty Live that happened. So two main things off the bat. First of all, I loved it. I thought it was really cool, and I'm a part of the group of people who thinks they should do it again and hopes they do, which looks like it's the majority. And the other thing is that, you know, a lot of what I feel about it has been echoed already by people, and I feel like Bungie have already taken it on board. So I'm not going to drive it into the mud, but yes, it did take too long. If you weren't there for it, it took an hour and a half for the Almighty to blow up and fall out of the sky in total, which I do agree is a very long time. However, I do have a counter argument to that. I don't think that the timing of the event would have been a problem at all had they just made it a complete surprise. People, when it happened, kept comparing it to the Fortnite event when they announced Fortnite 2. Everyone kept saying that Bungie have done their first Fortnite style event. I just think it would have been really cool if they said that it was going to happen at a certain time and then it took an hour and a half, but imagine if you logged in at that time, there was a message on screen that was like, Rasputin's powered up, quick, get to the tower, and you went and you were like, I don't know what's going to happen. Is the Almighty going to fly from the sky? I don't know. Like, people would obviously dip in and dip out if they saw that things weren't happening, but that would mean that the whole thing on Twitter would be like, oh my god, I see pink streaks in the sky, oh my god, it looks like stars, is things falling from it? People would slowly trickle in over time, and it would have been this big, exciting thing. Instead, what they decided to do is tweet the night before that at this time the Almighty is going down, but then the whole event from start to finish took an hour and a half. And if people are going to compare it to the Fortnite event anyway, why not go all the way with that? Why not make it a complete surprise? Why not buzz people during whatever they're doing? Why not alert people? Why not tweet it in the moment? Why not be like, oh, something's happening in the tower, everyone's turning and looking at the sky, is the Almighty about to be, you know, brought down? Like, who knows? I mean, we wouldn't know what was happening, but still, like, there would have been ample suspense, but not suspense that was kind of followed by, alright, but it's 6, like, why isn't anything happening? So my main kind of feelings on that was, yes, loved it, please do more, but also take a better look at the timing, and please maybe consider doing one as a surprise and not telling anyone about it until like the penultimate moment. I think that would be really cool. Please experiment with that. Just see see how people react to it, just see what they say. I think you might be surprised by how much people like stuff like that. Like me, I like stuff like that. And with the turning off of my phone, ergo the battery going dead, and my script being lost to time, it's time to end the video here. So those were my thoughts on Season of the Worthy. I told myself this was going to be a short video because I didn't do a lot of it, but obviously I managed to ramble and rant about lots of things. Which is just true Jade fashion at this point. If you agreed or disagreed with anything that I said, please leave a respectable comment down in the comment section below. And yes, we've had to do another scene change because my camera once again ran out of battery right as I was getting towards the end of the video. Won't keep you too much longer. My name is Jade, otherwise known as ScarletRebel. This channel is a place for me to talk about anything and everything I'm into as far as video games, movies, D&D, comics, beauty, books, writing, reading, everything. Everything and everything I'm into. I just like to turn my camera on and have a little ramble about it. If you like the sound of all of that and you like the video that you just watched, please consider subscribing. And I will leave links for all of my socials down in the description below. Not description. Yes, description. For some reason I was thinking comment section. Description. They'll be in the description. If you love Destiny as much as I do, definitely consider following me on Twitter because I tend to rant and rave about it a lot on Twitter. So with that being that, I will leave you all here and I hope you all have a fun and safe and wonderful day. See you later. I also got the location of Europa and Enceladus wrong in the video. That I put up a couple of videos ago, and my partner was quick to correct me because he's a space nerd. So I'm just joking, Tristan. I love you.